Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where you can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 179 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on why do couples break up? And it is Saturday, the 19th of November 2022 as I record this. So the reason why I actually wanted to cover today's episode, well, is that there's plenty of renewable research that actually looks into the 12 reasons why couples break up, and some of it is actually really interesting. And this I sort of see as a sort of like palate cleanser sort of like episode, because over the past few weeks we have looked at quite a few sort of heavier topics and are quite clinically focused podcast episodes, so I just want to sort of like change it up like this week though. But we do cover some brilliant stuff for today, so that's coming up in the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest, and there's some great ones here today. For example, and this I do admit is a bit contentious. So the first one is, adopting a smile can make you feel a little bit happier. The idea that facial movements influence emotion is contentious. That's mostly because research in the field has produced some very mixed results. One of the best known findings in support of the idea that holding a pencil between the teeth to stimulate a smile makes people feel more amused by humorous cartoons notoriously fail to replicate. A finding hailed as the nail in the coffin for this facial feedback hypothesis. However, subsequent meta-analyses concluded that facial feedback can have an effect on an emotion. This uncertainty led to a global group of researchers to come together to form the Many Smiles Corporation. Some were for the hypothesis, some against it, and some had no strong feelings. This week we looked at the nuances of what they found. So I won't actually go into it in any great depth, but I think the most important thing here, like this area of research, personally I think it's very plagued because you've got the replication crisis, you've got all the methodological flaws there, because for some coursework in my Cognition in Action module, we actually had to look at a paper that actually looked at this sort of thing. And I mean, some of the methodology you really do have to look at and think, is that really the best way to test it? I don't know, so I think it would be nice if facial movements can affect our emotions, and I think there does have to be an effect size, like these meta-analyses say, but I don't think it's going to be a big groundbreaking thing, and I don't think it's going to be a very large effect size, but it's still interesting to look at. That, and I also really like the idea that they've actually brought tons of people together. There are some people are against it, some people are for it, and some people don't have very strong emotions. I think that's the best way to go about it. You get tons of researchers together, you look at the evidence, and then you decide. So that I think is really, really good. And I definitely think that some other fields could use that for some other contentious topics. So the next one is test anxiety makes it harder to absorb information whilst preparing for an exam. Many students find taking exams stressful. Open a quote. They worry about whether they will be able to recall their knowledge. Their hearts beat faster, they sweat, and they want to escape the exam room. Close a quote. But the authors of a new study on this phenomenon known as test anxiety. People with test anxiety tend to perform worse in exams, and so far researchers have assumed that this is because feelings of anxiety interfered with a person's ability to retrieve knowledge from their memory during a test. However, the new study finds that test anxiety begins to have negative effects much earlier, making it harder to acquire knowledge during the exam preparation period. Yeah, this one I completely agree with, because the new cohort that I'm with, because I did my placement year, so the people that I started university with, they've graduated, so I'm in with a new cohort, which is just absolutely brilliant, for reasons I can't say. Yeah, so like, they're just like great though, because they're really like funny and like everything. Yeah, so but because this cohort has never had a exam at university, because of COVID, and then last year, I'm pretty sure they had their stuff online like, last year. Yeah, but they did. Our end of year exams are actually going to be online, and we're also relieved about it. And to be honest, if there are any students here that have actually had exams during COVID, then we all know that just because exams are online, it's slightly more relaxing, but it's still quite stressful. Well, even the exam preparation period is negatively impacted by the exam anxiety. It's actually quite concerning, because if you can't prepare for it properly, then you're going to do even worse in the exam. So if you do suffer from test anxiety, I know this probably won't help, but I would just say try and relax and basically just try and find a way to decrease your anxiety about it. And the last one is women who use self-enhancing humor tend to have a more positive body image. Body image issues can have a serious impact on our well-being. Negative body image is linked to the development of eating disorders, as well as feelings of shame and anxiety. It's important then to investigate factors that are associated with the way we think about our bodies. A new paper looks at the role humour plays. It finds that women who have a positive self-accepting sense of humour are also more likely to accept their bodies, and that, conversely, those who have a self-critical sense of humour are less likely to. However, the correlational design of the study means that the direct cause and effect isn't clear. Yeah, so that's definitely quite an interesting point there, because last month on the podcast we looked at the body image issues, well, best around young men, teenagers, and younger boys. But when it comes to women though, I know that they have it worst off, and that was something that we repeatedly mentioned on the podcast episode. So the fact that there is a sort of I don't know what you would call it, I guess a sort of self-defense mechanism, because sense of humour, if you know to change your sense of humour style, of course that will be difficult but if you can work on it to become more self-accepting and more positive towards yourself, then that could be a protective factor against you having a negative body image. So it's good that we've got this research, and I just think that it would be interesting to see how do we apply it to the real world, because of course you can't just suddenly change your humour style. And in an ideal world, you would be able to test it just so you can see, does having a self-enhancing humour style cause positive body image or the other way around? But I don't really know how you would test it off the top of my head. I don't know, but it's interesting and it's good that we've got them. So I hope you enjoyed the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So this week we've still been doing tons of testing, and we've still continuing with our data collection. This week has been a lot of fun because for a wide range of reasons. But yesterday I did feel so sorry for our participants who came in at 5 till 6, because if you've ever had EEG, then you know that sometimes it can take quite a while though for the gel to settle for the impedance, so that's the strength of the connection between the electrical activity in the brain and the scalp. Sometimes it takes quite a while for that to settle. This was one of those times, and because me and the girl that I was working with, we have been doing it all day. We've been doing it for 6 hours, and we had a very, I would sort of say, boring lecture beforehand. We were quite tired by the end of it, so our conversations got really weird. I actually forget what some of them were, but I know I sort of apologised to the participant about twice because of the weird conversation. But one of the conversations was about, I said to the girl that she didn't make a good enough sacrifice to the EEG gods, and then because she's a Kenyan, she started talking about Kenyan sacrifice traditions in her religion. No, we're not her religion, her tribe's religion. Yeah, so that was quite interesting. So we sort of toed and froed about that, because I thought that she should sacrifice not a goat, because who can find a goat these days? And I said to just sacrifice some chickens. So yes, that's sort of the level of a conversation that we got to after 6 hours of EEG. But it is a lot of fun. So as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi whiteley. Well, but for now, you can tweet me on the Twitter with everything going on. I always love to hear from you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And you can always leave a comment on the Facebook post at Connor Whiteley, psychology author. And today's episode has been sponsored by Psychology of Relationships, the social psychology of friendships, romantic relationships, and more, 4th edition. So this is an absolute brilliant brand new edition with tons of new real information, and for example the theories of sexuality, homosexuality, and so many more absolutely brilliant topics that I just love. This is such a really fun book, and that passion does come through. But connecting it to today's episode is that if you enjoy today's episode about why do couples break up, then this great, really easy to understand book actually goes into a lot more depth about why do couples break up. For example, the 6 stages of a relationship breakdown, communication, and then it also goes into the biological, social, and the psychological causes of a attraction and of relationships. So there's so many great information in this book that I cannot recommend it enough. So that is the psychology of relationships, the social psychology of friendships, romantic relationships, and more, a 4th edition. Available at all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and the hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. And you can also order the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/Connor Whiteley. And it's the exact same book that you would get from any e-book retailer, but it just means that I get more of the money as the creator. But if you didn't want to buy a book, but you still wanted to give the podcast a bit of one-time support, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about why do couples break up. And because I've given an introduction to this topic in the introduction part of today's episode, about this being a sort of palate cleanser episode, I'm actually just gonna dive straight into it. Why do we need to look at why couples break up? The main reason why I want to look at this is because the main audience for the podcast is psychology students and professionals, and anyone interested in psychology. And just because we love that psychology, it doesn't make us immune to breakups and other relationship-related behaviours. Therefore, I want to look at it for all of us, so we listeners can get a better understanding. However, if we look towards our clients, then a relationship breakdown can seriously impact their mental health. So by looking at this topic, it helps us to gain insight about how they're feeling as well. For example, Rhodes and all 2011 that breakups can increase a person's psychological distress as well as reduce their life satisfaction. And it's interesting to note that breakups can impact a person's mental health for months and even years after it happens. In addition, after a relationship ends, it's important for people to take a notice and to think about what went wrong. This can be done by themselves or friends, or with the help of a therapist. This can be a good thing to do, as it helps the person to make sure they don't enter a similarly vulnerable situation again in the future. Additionally, this is exactly why it's a good idea to at least be aware of the common things that lead to breakups, so that you can help to manage your own relationship and maybe even steer yourself in a better direction in the future. And I just want to say here that if you're listening to today's episode and you realise that you want to change a few things in your own relationship, one, I think that's a very healthy way to look at it, because it shows that you care about the relationship, and two, I seriously doubt you'll be alone. Building upon that last point, breakups really are just a part of life because roads and all also showed that a third of unmarried people were between the ages of 18 to 35 have had a breakup in the past 2 years. Why do couples break up? Personally, I do always find it quite interesting to read these sort of research articles, because it is an area I would never personally research, because I can imagine this sort of thing gets quite depressing after a while. But I really do admire the researchers that want to investigate this area. Therefore, according to Graveland and all 2017, here are the 12 most common reasons for why couples in the UK break up. And also I should also mention that these are in order. Okay then. So they grew apart, arguments, unfaithfulness, lack of respect, different interests, moved, and presumably what this point is that presumably one partner wanted to move away for some reason and the other didn't. Money issues, not sharing housework. I can really imagine that a bunch of people are nodding here right now, because I think that would be a seriously annoying thing that I find in the future. Difficulties with sex, domestic violence, not wanting children, so presumably one person does want children but the other doesn't. Drugs, gambling, or drinking. Personally, before I explore the results in any great depth, I just want to mention my thoughts, because I think these are quite interesting, since the first 5 or so aren't that surprising in the slightest, and I can fully understand why not sharing housework is a factor in breaking up. Yet different interests I do find interesting, because I personally believe that it's healthy to have your own things in a relationship. So where you effectively have you time or your space. But this finding raises the point that you always need to strike a balance, as with everything in life. So you still need to have your time and interest, but you also need to have shared interests too, and effectively bond over. Overall, another interesting thing about the findings were that these factors were relatively consistent for both men and women, since both genders said arguments and growing apart were the top 2 reasons for breaking up. Yet there were some gender differences, because women were more likely than men to say lack of respect was a more important factor for breaking up, along with money issues, domestic violence, and not sharing household responsibilities. Furthermore, another reason this is important to look at is that because Williamson and all 2016 found many problems that led to a divorce were present at the beginning of a relationship. Therefore, it is very possible that if a couple sort out their issues sooner rather than later in a relationship and do eventually get married, then they might save themselves the trouble of a divorce. On the other hand, we have to realize that people do heal from a breakup, and the damage, hurt, and pain they cause aren't permanent. As well as Gardner and Oswald, 2005 found some vital findings showing that divorcing couples do reap a lot of psychological gains from breaking up their marriage, and men and women tend to benefit equally in this regard. This can be supported with the following quote. Open quote. Divorce works. The evidence suggests that marital dissolution eventually produces a rise in psychological well-being. For those couples who take it, the leap into the darkness seems to improve their lives. Close quote. Conclusion. As at the end of the episode, I am not denying that breakup are emotionally devastating, but it is important to learn from. We need to take time to reflect on what happened, what went wrong, and what we could do in the future to protect ourselves from another letdown. I hope the 12 reasons we briefly looked at in this episode might help you to give you a place to start. However, I will make this point very clear. We must not shelter away from the world after a breakup. You must at some point get back out and get back out on the dating scene. Because sheltering yourself away out of fear will do you no good whatsoever. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and that you got something out of it. As I said earlier, I always really enjoy these sort of like palate cleanser episodes and these more social psychology episodes because you really can apply them to everyday life. And that I think is just absolutely brilliant, and I will continue to do them into the future. If you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the words about the podcast. And definitely check out Psychology of Relationships, the social psychology of friendships, romantic relationships, and more, 4th edition. Available in all the usual places, including my own direct store at payhip.com/Connor-Whiteley. But if you didn't want to buy a book, but you still wanted to give the podcast a bit of like one-time support, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor-Whiteley. So have a great day everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.